What's up, everybody? Greetings and salutations. It's E. Spencer Kyte, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, here on Severe MMA YouTube page with the Severe MMA Picks and Plays for UFC 281, which takes place Saturday afternoon and evening at Madison Square Garden in New York City. It is the best fight card of the year. If you have been paying attention this week here on Severe MMA, you know we are fired up. You know that I personally am quite fired up for this card. As I just said, it is the best of the year. Top to bottom, this is the most entertaining collection of fights and the most overall interesting set of fights for 2022 in my books. We are going to get into a great deal of things here. We're going to go top to bottom with picks. We're going to add some wagering selections in there. We're going to start with the responsible gaming. Listen, if you're out there and you are following this show, if you are wagering on MMA or any sporting venture, please do so responsibly, right? We say it all the time, and I know it sounds like one of those things that we mean half-heartedly, but look, I don't. I've done this for a long time. I've been around sports betting my entire life, and gambling my entire life, working in casinos as well. It's a slippery slope. Please only put in what you can afford to lose. The house always wins. That saying is there because it is goddamn true. So please, if you or anyone you know is struggling with this issue, is having problems when it comes to sports gambling or gambling of any sort, please consult the references that we put in the descriptions of the YouTube page of this program, of this show. We have them for Canada, the United States, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. Please check them out. This is meant to be a fun diversion, distraction, side piece to enjoying the fights, not a problem, not a thing that gets you in any kind of bad shape, any kind of bad space. So please, folks, please gamble responsibly, wager responsibly. And I say that in part, and look, this is the only way I can make this segue. Don't end up like me last week at UFC Vegas 64, where 24.25 units went out and only 4 units came back in for a total event loss of negative 20.25 units. Terrible ROI. The year-to-date difference, we are down 41.77 units. It's been bad. It continues to go bad. And looking at last week, the Neil Magny, Daniel Rodriguez playing both sides of that decision, that's a bad bet. It's on me. It's a bad bet. The rest of them, I mean, going as hard as I went on Miranda Maverick, probably could have dialed that back 2 units to win instead of 4, 1 unit to finish in the first, and sort of taken some of the heft of the action, the heft of the units wagered out of there. But I still like the read. I mean, Miranda Maverick was close to finishing in every round. Well, maybe not the first. But I still like the read. She dominated, and it just didn't work. It just didn't come. The finish didn't get there. We were close a couple times. It didn't get there, and we lost a bunch. So I could probably dial some of that back, some of the underdog plays, some of the underdog just straight bets. None of them, not a single one of them hit. Not Ramona Pascal, not Ludovic Cholinian, not Jinyu Frey, not Mark Madsen, not Nate Maness. It just didn't. And Marina Rodriguez got slapped in the main event. This is how these things break sometimes. And last week, it broke real bad. And so far this year, it's just been breaking bad. This is a tough racket. This is a hard thing to have success in. And the part of the reason that I look to and respect so many of the people in this industry that do this and have success is for that exact reason. They know when to get their money in. They know when to keep their money out. They make smart plays. They do well. I'm trying to get there, and we're just going to keep working at it. This week, in addition, before I move forward to this week, in addition with the predictions themselves, it was another positive week. We had more winners than losers last week. in the predictions. We went 6-5. It was close, but we still to the good, still 6-5 for a overall year of 266, 153 and 2 with one no contest for a 6.63 win percentage, 630 win percentage. And we're coming up towards the end of the year. Like the 70% win percentage, the 700 winning percentage isn't going to happen. And I've accepted that. Not in a like, oh, I can't get that, but like I don't think I can actually technically get there. I haven't done the math yet because I don't want to know 100% for sure that I can't get there, but it would take me going damn near perfect the rest of the year. And while that is always my goal, my aim, my hope, I can be honest and acknowledge that it's probably not going to happen. I'm probably going to get one or two fights wrong, but we're going to keep trying. And so we shift our focus now to UFC 281. As I said, Madison Square Garden, the Mecca in the city that never sleeps, the Big Apple, New York City. This is an outstanding card, an outstanding collection of fights. And we'll get started with the main event, the middleweight title fight, Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira. I think there are more ways for Izzy to win this fight. I think if Israel is smart, if Israel is savvy, I think coming off the 2 losses in kickboxing, there's a little bit of get back here for Izzy that he's seeking, that he'd like, that I'm almost certain he would like. And when you're the guy that has said throughout the 53 weeks that Alex Pereira has been in the UFC, that was then and this is now, and that was kickboxing and this is MMA, you need to go out and show that was then and this is now, and that was kickboxing and this is MMA, and that you've moved on and you've leveled up and you're better than him at this sport. And so I think Israel does that. I do think he retains his title. I think we get a more exciting fight than we've gotten the last couple. I think we see more wrinkles from Izzy this fight. I expect to see wrestling. I expect to see takedowns. I expect to see more variety and more general overall offerings on the feet to try to keep Alex Pereira off him at times. I also think we see Izzy work inside a little bit more so that Alex Pereira can't land that big left hook. And I think overall, the longer this goes, the more it favors Izzy. So if he can push this into rounds 3, 4, or 5, then I think he is more likely to get the job done than if this ends early. And so on a betting front, I've got half a unit on Israel to finish at plus 275 for a return of 1.88 units, and a full unit on him to win by decision at plus 125 for a 2.25 unit return. As I said, I think the avenues to victory are more plentiful for Izzy. To me, Pereira needs the knockout. Pereira has to go out and finish him. We haven't seen him over 25 minutes in MMA, and I don't think that's there. I don't think he can beat Izzy for 25 minutes. We've seen Israel be too good over that distance too many times. And so I think the champ retains. I think the last style bender closes out the show with a victory, with the belt over his shoulder. And then it's just a matter of whether he gets it done inside the distance or uses the full 25 minutes. Co-main event, women's strawweight title fight. Carla Esparza defends against former champion Zhang Weili. There are roads to victory for Carla Esparza. They are boring roads. They are roads that no one wants to travel. It is a lot of wrestling. It is a lot of clinch and control and just kind of being a wet blanket. Or it's the Rose Namajunas fight all over again, where you stay all the way outside and we're looking at deciding rounds based on 3 strikes and 1 takedown. But in the grand scheme of things, when I look at this, when you break this down, when you look at these two side by each, you have to favor Zhang Weili. You have to pick Zhang Weili, unless you're just being a contrarian that's, deciding to pick Carla Esparza. And so I do think the former champion becomes the new champion. We get a third 2-time champion in the strawweight division, because I just think that all the things that Carla Esparza is going to want to do are things that Zhang Weili can defend, and we've seen her defend. Now, it hasn't been defending wrestling against a fighter with a base of wrestling that Carla Esparza has, that has the tenacity and the chain wrestling that Carla Esparza has, and so that will be an interesting wrinkle, especially early. But I just think that Zhang Weili will be able to do enough neutralizing those early takedown attempts, shutting down those early takedown attempts that will frustrate and leave Carla Esparza with no options and unsure of what to do next, right? If you think back to her fight with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the last time she was in this position, entering as champion, first title defense, dangerous challenger, when she couldn't get the wrestling going, when she couldn't get in on the hips of Joanna Jędrzejczyk and get her to the ground, the look on her face was just, I don't know what to do here. And while I think she's absolutely grown from there, I think there's still that, like, I don't know what my road to victory is. I don't know what my path to victory is here. And I have to just keep doing the same thing. Because she doesn't have, well, I can strike with this woman. Because no, you don't want to. You can't. And so I just think that provided Zhang Weili is able to defend those early takedowns and keep this, basically just dictate where this fight takes place, whether she's interested in being on the ground in top position as well, or whether she just decides, nah, we're not going to the canvas. We're just standing here and you're dealing with my power and my speed and my athleticism and the variety of attacks that I can offer. This is what we're doing. I just think there is too much working against Carla Esparza for her to retain her title. And so in terms of a wagering selection, in terms of bets, I just a little here. It's half a unit on Zhang Weili to finish in the first at plus 400. Excuse me. And half a unit for her to finish in the second at plus 500. The first returns 2.5 units. The second returns 3.0 units. And so it's just banking on a belief, banking on a feeling that she goes out and gets this done and gets it done emphatically and early. Could I spread more units out further down the road into the third, into the fourth, into the fifth, all of those things? Absolutely. Those feel like mistakes I've made in the past where you're kind of just throwing extra units away and yep, can reduce the number and you can go a quarter unit or you can go a tenth of a unit or whatever the number may be. But I'm trying to learn to just pick the one or two that I think are most likely, get my money in and not really try to cover all my bases. Because as we've learned over the last several weeks, sometimes those bases don't get covered and you lose extra money. And I don't want to lose extra money. I just want to try to win some money. So that's the wager. Move to the middle fight on the main card, Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. I'll start with the wagers because I don't have any. This is a stay away for me. This is I just want to sit back and watch these two beat the holy hell out of each other because that's what I think is going to happen. I think this is a legitimate grudge match. I think Chandler was pretty pissed off that Dustin Poirier didn't want to give him the credit he felt he was due coming over from Bellator and everything he had accomplished there. I think Dustin Poirier didn't like a guy coming in and saying, I'm the most entertaining fighter in this division, even though he's 2-2 in the UFC. And one of those wins is the ghost of Tony Ferguson. And the other is a guy that Dustin Poirier beat in Dan Hooker. And then, just some of the usual macho bravado, I'm better than you shit factors into there too. And I think we're going to get 15 minutes, maybe not quite similar, the same as what we saw from Chandler and Justin Gaethje last year at Madison Square Garden, but pretty close. I think we're going to get two guys that just want to go out there and swing hammers and throw shots and look to put each other down. I think we'll see a lot more leg kicks in this fight. I think we will see both guys get hit with big shots and have to respond. And I think Dustin Poirier gets the best of it. The best thing I can do for you right now, though, is direct you to go and check out Harry's one-man booth. He covers this fight. It is on the Severe MMA Patreon. I believe it will be posted for free. It is as in-depth an analysis and breakdown of each of these men and what that can then mean on Saturday night and what to then expect on Saturday night, as you're going to find the series is terrific. His depth of analysis and research and interest is amazing. Please go check that out. No bets. I think Dustin Poirier wins, but most of all, I think we get an absolute barn burner of a fight. Moving on the main card, bantamweight fight, Frankie Edgar, final appearance for the answer against Chris Gutierrez. I'm going to start with the wager because it's going to lead into my prediction. And so my wagers are half a unit on Frankie Edgar to win at plus 180 and half a unit on Frankie Edgar to win by decision at plus 350. The former pays 1.4 units in return, the latter 2.25 units in return. I will tell you right now, this is a heart pick. It happens sometimes. This is largely a heart pick. That's not to say that I don't believe in what I'm about to tell you and in those wagers. But some of this is just heart. Some of this is ignoring the fact that 40-year-old Frankie Edgar got knocked out badly in each of his last two fights, including last year at Madison Square Garden against Chito Vera. But I also think, and I say this with a great appreciation for what Chris Gutierrez has done entering on a 3-fight winning streak and a 7-fight unbeaten streak. Chris Gutierrez is one of those guys that I need to see you beat Frankie Edgar before I can believe that you are going to beat Frankie Edgar. Because as much as Frankie lost that fight to Chito, he had moments in that fight where he was successful. And before that, he went toe-to-toe with Pedro Munoz for 5 rounds. Now, whether you think he won that decision or not, he went 25 minutes with a top 15 stalwart. And Chris Gutierrez isn't there yet. And so I think there is enough room here and enough ways that Frankie can get this done for the wagers to be worthwhile, for the wagers to be potentially successful. I wouldn't be surprised to see Frankie come out and wrestle and throw a bunch of low kicks and basically do Frankie Edgar things, right? Just come in, mix it up, hit a level change, put Chris Gutierrez on his back, rough him up a little bit on the ground. That's round 1 in the bank. And then he just needs one more. I don't know that Chris Gutierrez is the dynamic finisher and the power finisher that the guys that have beaten Frankie Edgar and that have stopped Frankie Edgar, frankly, lately are. I don't think he's Corey Sandhagen. He's not hitting flying knees. He's not hitting, the stuff that Chito hit him with the front kick up the middle and things like that. I don't think. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on Saturday. But I just think that in preparing for one last fight and for going out at home in front of friends, family, faithful, all of those things, we get one last Frankie Edgar victory. We get a sprint to the cage to kick in the door. Everybody gets pumped because it's Biggie. And Frankie gets one more victory to go out on a high. And we cash some underdog tickets. I might be dead wrong. Chris Gutierrez may come out here and shatter this man. And I'll be sad. We talked about it on the preview show. A lot of this lines up to be sad. I'm hoping we get a happy ending. Ever the optimist, I'm hoping we get the happy ending. Final fight of the main card, or opening fight of the main card, depending on how you're looking at it. Lightweight fight between Dan Hooker and Claudio Puelles. Puelles is my fighter to watch this week. My selection here is Dan Hooker. I think this is one of those fights where we kind of forget how good Dan Hooker is, right? It hasn't gone well over the last 2 fights. It generally hasn't gone that well over the last 5, where he is 1-4, but he's been fighting infinitely better competition, with all due respect, than Claudio Puelles, right? Arnold Allen is a top 5 featherweight. Islam Makhachev, who beat him before that, is the current lightweight champion. Dustin Poirier is in there. And there's always one that I can't remember. I can't remember who the loss before or after Dustin Poirier is. So I'm looking it up because I want to get it. Oh, it is Chandler. Right. Chandler's debut. So he's lost to the two guys that are fighting in the middle of this card, or the middle of this main card. He's lost to the champion, and he's lost to a guy that should be fighting for the featherweight title. That isn't a guy that I'm necessarily betting against or picking against, even though he's facing somebody that's on a 5-fight winning streak and has hit back-to-back knee bars and seems to have a WWE style finisher in Claudio Puelles. This is one of those instances similar to the Chris Gutierrez thing, but just like cranked up to 100, where you got to show me you can beat Dan Hooker or Dan Hooker level fighters before I can pick you. You've looked good against Chris Gritzmacher and Clay Guida these last two fights, but they ain't Dan Hooker, and Dan Hooker ain't going to play when you're ain't gonna sit there and mess around when you're chasing knee bars and ankle locks and heel hooks and things like that. He's going to make all the right decisions, all the right choices, and smash you in the face, because that's who Dan Hooker is. The other thing that factors in here, a couple other things that factor in here. We've got a CKB invasion. This is NZ Takeover NY on Saturday night, right? Izzy, Dan Hooker, Brad Riddell, Carlos Alberg, all in camp together, all prepping, all coming over together. The whole crew will be there. I think that fires up Dan, who is the sort of unofficial captain of this crew. Secondly, it's impossible to understand the impact that the COVID restrictions had on these athletes from New Zealand, because they were in supreme lockdown. Like, we've heard the stories of fighters in North America that struggled to get into the gym and things like that at different points. New Zealand was lockdown for 2 years. Like, we're not going to the gym. You're not going out. You're not doing much of anything. And it helped them as a nation keep their COVID deaths low, keep their COVID numbers in general low. And on a medical front, on a medical side, they get plaudits for that. They get praise for that. Jacinta Ardern, their prime minister, deserves, or Jacinta Ardern, I believe is her name, deserves recognition for those decisions and all that they brought. But they also created hurdles and challenges for these athletes. And I think we're going to see the best version of these athletes in these next few fights. I think we are going to see the best version of Dan Hooker in a while in this fight on Saturday. And so when we move over to the wagering side of things, this is the one where I'm going a little bit bigger. So this is 4 units to win on Dan Hooker at -160, which returns 6.5 units. It's a unit on Dan Hooker to finish at +200, which would return 3 units. And it's a unit to finish in the first round at +550, which would return another 6.5 units. I think Dan Hooker gets this done, as I said, and I think he gets it done quickly and viciously. And if he does, we are 6 units out for 16 units back. And I'm gonna take that shot. I'm gonna take those opportunities. Right? Is my math right there? 6.5 is 13, and 3 more is 16. So a 10-unit profit right out of the gate, or late in the gate, I guess, if Dan Hooker gets this done inside of 1. Move down to the prelims. Final prelim of the night, Brad Riddell, Dan Hooker's teammate, taking on Renato Moicano in a lightweight fight. This is going to be a good fight. This is going to be a fun fight. These two dudes just get after it. They are tough. They are scrappy. They are hard to put away. They're both very good everywhere. Moicano a better grappler, but Brad Riddell a good scrambler and probably has a little bit of a speed advantage. And I'm leaning Riddell. I think, as I said earlier in the week on one question, that fight with Rafael Dos Anjos, to me, takes a little bit of something out of Renato Moicano. The wins he's had prior to that fight, while very good against Jai Herbert and Alexander Hernandez, are not the same caliber as Brad Riddell, who has fought very tough competition of late, even though he hasn't necessarily been successful the whole way through. I don't think Moicano has the one-hitter quitter power that Jalen Turner has, that led to the knockdown and set up to the finish of his last performance. I think it's less of a danger than the Rafael Fiziev fight before that. And I just think, as I said a minute ago with Dan Hooker, these guys are all going to be looking to make statements and looking to show that the last couple appearances they've had aren't representative of who they are, aren't necessarily the best representation of what they bring to the table and who they are as athletes because of the lockdowns, because of the restrictions. And so when we shift that over to the wagering side of things, it's half a unit on Brad Riddell to win at plus 100 for a return of 1 full unit. And it's half a unit on Brad Riddell to win by decision at plus 275, which would return 1.88 units. I don't see this being a finish. I think this goes the full 15. I think it's competitive. I think it's 29-28. It may go, split decision. Like, this is just a close competitive fight. And I'm going to go with the slightly younger, slightly less worn guy in Brad Riddell over Renato Moicano. Light heavyweights, Dominic Reyes returning for the first time since his loss to now champion Yuri Prochazka last May of 2021 against Ryan Spann from Fortis MMA. I'm going with the underdog. I'm going with Ryan Spann. And here's why. I think that Ryan Spann, if he ever sorts things out mentally, if he can ever get his processing and his decision-making to a point where he's making the right decisions in the moment, or at least just slowing himself down properly in the moment to allow things to happen right, he can be a world champion. He is that good. He has the size, he has the power in both hands, he has the grappling acumen. He is an absolute monster who thus far, his 2 losses have been a result of bad decision making. That's it. Getting a little ahead of himself, rushing a little too much, bad choices, gets caught, gets stuck. I like that he got a victory against Iwan Kutalaba last time out. I think he showed some better decision making or some better patience and poise in that fight. I also have no idea what to expect from Dominic Reyes. And that's the other reason I side with Ryan Spann here. Reyes is a complete and utter question mark to me at this point. Comes in on 3 straight losses. We talked about it on the preview show. No idea whether losing that decision to John Jones when a lot of people thought he beat him, myself included, just breaks you as a fighter, just shakes you to your core to where you can't get out of the tailspin. And so to then go out and get knocked out against Jan Blachowicz, to then follow that up by getting knocked out viciously by Yuri Prochazka, like, we've seen this dude get tagged and Ryan Spann hits like a ton of bricks and he comes out hard and he comes out fast. And so after almost 18 months on the sidelines and 3 straight losses, and we're not quite sure, I'm going to side with the underdog on this one. I'm going to take Spann. In terms of the wagering, I'm going to do that little stack that I like. So it's 1 unit on Ryan Spann to win at plus 180. It's half a unit on Ryan Spann to finish at plus 275. And it's half a unit on him to finish in round 1 at plus 650. So the returns are 2.8 units, 1.88 units, and 3.75 units. So if Ryan Spann gets this done inside of 1, we get a great big return for 2 units laid out. These are the little stacks that I like to bet. These are the little thought process plays that I like to make. Right. I cashed one early this year, early in the venture of doing this. Tyson Nam against Ode Osborne. The way I saw Tyson Nam winning that fight, the best path to victory for Tyson Nam in that fight was going to be to get a first round knockout. That is what happened. I think that is the case here with Ryan Spann as well. I don't think it necessarily has to be a knockout. I think it could be a knockdown to a submission. But I think if it's happening early. And so we go win, we go finish round 1, a total of 2 units. Let's see what we can do. Move to what might be the people's main event. Could very well be the people's main event. Molly McCann, Aaron Blanchfield, flyweight division. As much as what Molly has done so far this year has been impressive. The 2 knockouts in London against Luana Carolina and then against Hannah Goldie, beautiful victories, tremendous efforts, 3-fight winning streak, best form of her career. All of those things are true. She's in tough here. I think Erin Blanchfield rolls. I think this is a maybe not breakout moment for Erin Blanchfield, because I think she's fought good competition already. I think she opened some eyes last year when she beat Miranda Maverick. But this is the biggest name that she's fought to date, the most high-profile fighter she's faced to date, even though she's ranked ahead of Molly McCann in the rankings. And so I think this is a moment that a lot of people come to realize or come to join me on the Erin Blanchfield might be the best prospect in the UFC train, because I think she can dominate this fight. I think there's paths to a finish in this fight. And I just think that, you look at stylistically the way this lays out, the fighters that have beaten Molly McCann in the UFC are Jillian Robertson, Tyla Santos, and Laura Procopio. All 3 women put her on the ground, kept her there, or in the case of Robertson, got a submission finish. I think that's similar to what we see here. And look, Molly is going to have every opportunity early to come out and be the one dictating the terms of engagement. We saw in Blanchfield's last fight against JJ Aldrich that she can be backed up, that if you do work feints and footwork and movement and good volume, you can get her in bad spots. She is still raw on the feet. But if Molly McCann can't keep this standing, this is going to get one-sided real quick. And so when we slide over to the wagering side of things, it's a unit on Erin Blanchfield to finish at plus 187 for a return of 4.31 units. And then it is 2.5 units on Erin Blanchfield by decision at plus 100 for a return of 5 full units. So it's a total of 3.5 units out. It is 4.31 units in or 5.0 units in. So we're making 0.8 units, 0.89 units at the absolute worst if Erin Blanchfield wins. And I'll take that. I'll take a profit of almost a full unit anytime I get an opportunity. I think she wins this fight. She's a minus 400 favorite. I think she wins this fight. I think she does so handily. And so we play each side of the outcome and see if we can't get ourselves a decision win. Look, a decision win is a double up, right? And then just in case she gets a finish, we put a little sprinkle there to see if we can't cash that side as well. Middleweight fight, Andre Petrosky and Wellington Turman. From a wagering side of things, this is another one of those stayaways. I don't have a good enough feel for either of these guys and what they bring to the table to risk any of my money, even though it's pretend money. There are some times where it's just not worth, and look, there's probably prop bets here that are worth chasing on Petrosky to finish, on Turman to finish. If you like Turman as an underdog, great, have at it. Stay away from me. Learning some lessons. Stay away. Don't need that extra chase. I'm out. From a pick side, I lean Petrosky. And it's simply that the results have been more consistent thus far. And look, I am the first to tell you that the dudes that this guy has beaten and has beaten in the UFC are not great. They're just not. Michael Gilmore, washed out. Hu Yaozong, washed out. Nick Maximov, washed out. So it's 3 wins, 3 finishes against dudes that are no longer on the roster, or in the case of Hu Yaozong, who may still be on the roster, but not winning fights, not active, all of those things. But what leads me to Petrosky is in part the gym and the team that he's with, the Daniel Gracie crew, John Marquez, all those Philly guys, Pat Sabatini, Jeremiah Wells, Sean Brady. And I know some of the results haven't been there, right? Brady lost, Sabatini lost to Damon Jackson before that, but it's a good crew. It's a good camp. It's a good gym, good setup that they have. And Wellington Turman, to me, has just been a middling fight, a very middling fighter, a guy that can get hit, a guy that for being a grappler and a black belt and a submission artist isn't really great at putting the fights in those positions. and I lean Petrosky in terms of the wrestling and ability to get to top position and do damage and keep his arms from getting tangled up, as Misha Serkinov did not do last time out against Turman. And so pick-wise, I go Petrosky. I go with the favorite. But in terms of wagers, just keep me away from this one. I want no part of it. We hit the early prelims. Matt, the steamroller Frivola against Ottman Azaitar. This too is a stay away. I have no sense of what to expect from Ottman Azaitar. He hasn't fought in 2 years. He's got 2 wins in the UFC, both by knockout in the first round. But again, level of competition. He's 13-0, but again, level of competition. As much as I like Matt Frivola, as much as I got an underdog win on Matt Frivola earlier this year against Gennaro Valdez, he's a guy that is hittable. He is a guy that has been stopped early in the UFC. I do think he will look to wrestle and have success. He is my pick in terms of who I'm picking to win this fight for my predictions. I do think he will wrestle. I think he will do a better job of not engaging on Ottman Azaitar's terms. It'll look more similar to his fight with Gennaro Valdez than some of the other wild fracases he's been involved in over the course of his career. But it's a coin flip. Could he get clipped and finished in the first round? Yeah, of course he could. And not just in the like puncher's chance sense of things. We've seen it, right? Terrence McKinney ran 7 seconds. I believe Polo Reyes in his debut in a minute. So like Frivola can get hit and Azaitar can hit. So stay away from a wagering perspective for me. I'm picking Frivola to get the job done, just as the more active fighter, the guy that's been in there in the last 2 years, that's had some success in the last 2 years, that is fighting at home in New York City. He is a Long Island guy, I believe. And so we look to see the steamroller get it done, but it's a coin flip, guys. This isn't, if we were going confidence levels, this is confidence 1. Women's strawweight fight, Karolina Kowalkiewicz against Silvana Gomez Juarez. I'm picking Kowalkiewicz. I think she just, this is one of those fights where I just lean experience. I just lean resume and all of those things in a fight between 2 veteran competitors, right? Even though the results hadn't been there prior to the win over Felice Herrig earlier this year for Kowalkiewicz, she is just the far more experienced fighter of the 2. She's the much more polished. The one concern, if there is one, is that Gomez Juarez has the power advantage. We saw that in her last fight against Lina Yang, where she knocked her out. And it was a beautiful, terrific right hand. But before that, we saw her in there with athletes that were able to secure submissions. And Karolina Kowalkiewicz, for being a kickboxer, is also a pretty good grappler, is also a pretty good fight in the clinch, get you to the ground, start attacking limbs and necks. And so I just think that having finally gotten off the schneid, having finally broken that losing streak last time out, being at ATT for her camp, and getting the opportunity to return to Madison Square Garden, where she suffered her first professional loss, this is going to be, in my thought, in my prediction, a sort of fairy tale moment, a sort of full circle moment for Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So I think she gets the job done. As we slide over to the wagering side, it's half a unit to finish at plus 300, and it's half a unit to finish in the first round at plus 700. And it is entirely predicated on the fact that we've seen Silvana Gomez Juarez submitted in the first round in each of her first 2 fights, including that second fight against Vanessa Demopoulos, where she cracked Demo, put her down, and Lil Monster was still able to search and find and connect on an armbar. And so I think when you combine the experience advantage of Kowalkiewicz, the finishing abilities of Kowalkiewicz, we're going to take those big plus numbers and just put a little bit on there, spread a unit out across 2 wagers to finish in the first round. If it happens, we're spending 1, we're cashing 6, away we go. Featherweights, Michael Trizano and Sungwoo Choi. No wagers here. Again, this is another one of those, could go either way. This is going to be stick two cats in a bag and they just claw each other to death. Like, this is, I'm old, so I'm dating myself with this, but when I used to watch Looney Tunes cartoons and they got in fights, it would just be this tumble of dust, and you'd see arms and legs flying out, and occasionally a head would pop out and all of this thing. That's what I think this fight is going to be. Just 245-pound fighters bouncing all over the cage, beating the bloody hell out of each other, and I have no sense of who is going to land the more telling blows, the more definitive blows, the more impactful blows in terms of the wagering side of things. I don't want to start chasing this. I think in terms of the fight itself, in terms of technical abilities and overall success, I lean towards the South Korean fighter, Sungwoo Choi. I just think in watching that fight back that Mike Trizano had earlier this year against Lucas Almeida, that there's too many holes, that a good, powerful, slightly ahead of him fighter than that Sungwoo Choi is able to get the job done here. I could be wrong. Part of one of the things for me with Mike Trizano is that for the longest time, I always sort of thought of him as this wrestle boxer, but he just really isn't. He's more of a low volume kickboxer, really. And I think against Choi, who we've seen have success, who we've seen be in competitive fights against very good fighters, like Movsar Evloev in his debut and Gavin Tucker after that, he goes out and is able to do enough to get Trizano hurt. I don't know that he gets a finish. He might. We saw Trizano finish last time out. And so I just think in terms of the wagers, stay away. In terms of the predictions, give me Choi and we'll call it a day. Bantamweights, Julio Arce, Montel Jackson. I'm in on quick. Give me Jackson for the prediction. I'm not making any wagers on this one because, again, there's just not anything that I don't feel the need to really chase anything here. Montel Jackson, I believe, is a minus 200 or minus 210 favorite at the time I'm recording this on Thursday. I'm trying not to chase stuff. This is what I'm doing. I'm trying not to chase extra bets that I don't need to chase. But in terms of just the execution of this fight and from the prediction standpoint, I think Montel Jackson has the better path to victory. I think he closes the distance. He turns this into a wrestling match. He turns this into a grappling exchange, and he just sort of grinds out and pounds out a victory against Julio Arce, who is a very good fighter. This will be a good test for Montel Jackson. Part of the reason I'm not making any wagers is because I know the caliber of Julio Arce. This is a good fighter. It's a dude that people just don't necessarily look at and go, oh yeah, he's really good. He's really good. He's a really good fighter in this division. He is a perfect litmus test here. He is a perfect truth machine here, as my guy Tom Gerbasi would call him. This is the guy that proves this is the guy you go out and fight to prove that you're capable of moving forward. He's going to show us the real version of Montel Jackson. I think that version is good enough to move forward in this division and challenge for a place in the top 15 in the next 18 months. I'm not going to put any money on it. I'm not going to wager on it because I don't need to be. I'm not 100% sure, and I think Arce could win this fight. So I'm staying away wagering-wise, but I'm picking quick. We'll see if he gets it done. Opening bout of the night, Carlos Ulberg, the first of 4 city kickboxing representatives, taking on Nikolai Negu-Marianu in the light heavyweight division. My pick here is the underdog. I'm going Negu-Marianu. I think he is somebody that we're sleeping on a little bit. I think he's somebody that we've convinced ourselves that he's not as good as the record shows, and that he has benefited from fighting lesser competition, which may very well be the case, but he's still won 4 straight in the UFC, 2 of them being finishes. And I think he's got a path to victory here against Carlos Ulberg, who is a kickboxer. That's all he is. He's coming out and he's throwing big power. He's coming out and he's throwing kicks. And if you can wrestle him, we're going to see what happens. We saw him get tired from throwing shots. And look, he threw a whole ton of shots at Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and Kennedy was able to take them, weather the storm, and get a finish in the second round. But I just think that when you look at the totality of what Negumereanu has been able to do, that Ihor Pretoria fight last time out is instructive to me. I think we see him close the distance and turn this into a grind and kind of use the first round to drag Carlos Ulberg to the ground over and over again, if need be. Just tire him the Christ out. Burn all that energy. Fill those arms and legs with lactic acid so that he doesn't have the speed and the snap and the pop that he normally has, that is dangerous, that makes him understandably the favorite in this fight, coming off that quick knockout win or TKO win over Tefon Chukwi last time out. But I think the 4 wins in a row for Negumereanu should tell us more and should weigh more than the 2 consecutive victories for Ulberg. And so from a wagering standpoint, it's half a unit to win on Negumereanu at plus 125 and half a unit to finish at plus 210. The former returning 1.13 units, the latter 1.55 units. I just think I'm just leaning that the first member of the City Kickboxing crew catches an L. Then we get a bunch of fights in between. And then Brad Riddell and Dan Hooker get theirs. Izzy gets his to close out the night. But I just think there's a little bit more to Negumereanu than people maybe understand thus far. And I think he shows that on Saturday. That's it for the picks and the plays. It's a total of 18.75 units out. We'll see how we do. Hopefully, we have a good night. We've only had one. We debuted here on Severe with a positive night, and it's been downhill since. Hopefully, we bounce back. Hopefully, we have some good returns this weekend. I hope you have some good returns this weekend. I hope you enjoy the fights. As I said, go check out Harry's one-man booth. Check out the preview show. It is live now here on the YouTube page. We got into it early. Myself, Ian, Harry, Sean got into it, got heated, got fired up as friends and brothers and comrades in arms do at times over the main event and over Israel Adesanya. So go check that out. It is well worth your time. Check out the Saturday setup bright and early on Severe MMA, the platform itself, severemma.com. It will break down all of everything, give you all of everything you need from us for UFC 281 in one handy spot. You can just put it on in the background and play all the videos and enjoy them, as well as check out the Fighter to Watch. And then join us on Saturday. We're not doing a live stream or anything like that, but we will be a presence on Twitter. I will be, Harry will be, I believe. Io will not be. He is at a wedding. Shouts to Ian and his lovely lady that are off to Boston. Shawnee, I'm not sure about. I never know with Sean. Sean's got a lot going on right now. Shout out to the skipper. We hope you join us. But I will be there. Find me at Spencer Kyte. Until then, enjoy your Saturday before the fights kick off. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, for that matter, as you're listening to this. Know that you're loved. Know that we care about you. Please gamble responsibly. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. We love you. Talk soon.